So we start or like we can spend another. Okay, so welcome everybody, and this is the first talk of our 2020 Nobel Prize Special Colloquium series organized by VSM, the very serious meeting of RRI Astrofloor. So the VSM had started actually a few months back by the students and postdocs of RRI, and since then it has been a good program, and we are celebrating this 2020 Nobel Prize series lectures. As part of this, we have 3 lectures. First, we are starting with chemistry on CRISPR. So it's my pleasure to have Basudev with us today. He's been a very old friend and good friend to me. And so Basudev did his master's from Calcutta University back at home. And then he moved to Indian Institute of Science just across the road in the organic chemistry department, where he did his thesis with Santanu on polymerase process and developing anti-cancer drugs. I mean, application to anti-cancer. So he has a wide range of research interest, starting from chemical biology. Starting from using telomerase as an anti-cancer drug target, chemically induced activation of small molecules in beta cells, which can be useful in controlling type 1 and 2 diabetes. He also has extensively worked on chemical biology of CRISPR. Specifically, he has developed several chemically controlled CRISPR system, often using small molecules and lights, and related gene editing applications. So he will be talking to us today about CRISPR technique, which is a fascinating technique to edit genes, which led to the 2020 Nobel Prize in Chemistry. So over to you, Basudev.
Okay, let's get going. Hello everyone, a very good afternoon. I hope you all are doing great and safe. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers, especially Norin, and of course to RI for giving me this opportunity to bring the exciting science of CRISPR to you this afternoon. The topic of today's discussion is CRISPR, a CRISPR gift from microorganism to mankind for gene editing. However, before I go into the detail of the discussion, I'd like to remind to all of us that we are still in the middle of pandemic. Please follow government guidelines, maintain personal hygiene and social distancing. Let's fight this battle together from a safe distance. Keeping the diversity of today's audiences in mind, I would like to spend a couple of minutes on introducing the basic cellular processes so that we can have everyone on board and we can enjoy the discussion together till the end. After that, I will walk you through some of the history of CRISPR and how it led to the recognition of Nobel Prize in Chemistry this year. We'll also have glimpses of achievements with CRISPR and we'll discuss future prospect of it. At the end, we'll have question answer if you have any doubts. So let's begin with recapitulating basic cellular structure and function. The smallest subunit of any living organism is called cell. A cell has 3 things in common, no matter what kind of cells they are. 1, cell membrane that separates the cell from its environment, and 2nd, a jelly-like matrix called cytoplasm. 3rd, genetic material called DNA. Broadly, there are 2 categories of cells. One is eukaryotic cell on the left, which has compartments, different organelles. For example, nucleus, where you can find DNA. Eukaryotic cells are more complex and advanced, which you can find in higher organisms, for example, plants or animals. The second category is prokaryotic cells, which do not have organelles, but they do have genetic material or DNA, but not inside nucleus. Prokaryotic cells are always unicellular, for example, bacteria, which you can see under microscope. That's the reason we call bacteria as microscopic or microorganism. Cells use DNA as a template to make other biomolecules, for example, RNA and protein. First, a machinery that binds onto the DNA and then start unzipping or opening up the DNA. And in this process, it will copy only one of the strands. That means it will copy the genetic information that is already embedded into the DNA to this new molecule highlighted in yellow called RNA. This process of making RNA from DNA is called transcription. After the RNA gets synthesized, it undergoes editing called splicing to remove the unnecessary part, and then comes out of the nucleus to the cytoplasm, where it binds with another machinery called ribosome. This ribosome complex that can read the genetic information that is just transferred from DNA to RNA, and based on that, it can synthesize a new molecule called protein, highlighted in red color. The process of making protein from RNA is called translation. So you can imagine a picture like this where DNA transfers the genetic information to RNA and then it gets transferred to protein. So in this entire process, there are two crucial steps. One is transcription, making of RNA, and translation, making of protein. So the first question comes, what is gene editing? Any changes that you make onto the DNA that leads to change in the RNA and protein is called gene editing. However, you can also achieve such changes in the protein directly targeting the RNA or targeting the protein itself, called post-translational modification or PTM. One thing we have to keep in mind that's the reason I have highlighted this one in red color. Gene editing is always permanent, while RNA editing or PTM are transient. Okay, if you combine a cellular content or genetic content, we'll call that as genome. Our genome is enormous. It consists of almost 3.2 billion pairs of DNA letters, A, T, G, and C. And a segment of DNA that can code for a protein, single protein, is called gene. Then the obvious question comes, why do you need gene editing in the first place? Suppose you have been asked to type ATGC 3.2 billion times. That could be possible that you will make one or two mistakes. However, if cells make such mistake in a wrong position, for example, let's say it makes mistake in a crucial gene by incorporating a stop signal, so it will stop synthesizing crucial protein, for example, let's say dystrophin. In that case, it will lead to deadly genetic disease like muscular dystrophy. So to correct this kind of genetic error, we need a method, we'll call that as gene editing. However, finding out the error site and correcting it is not so trivial. It requires a module with three different modules. One is a powerful search engine. The second one is a binder with which it can hold onto the error site. And the third component is sharp cutting tool by which it can do genetic operation or manipulation. One thing we have to keep in mind that binding and cutting of genes, it has to be really precise to make a successful genetic operation. So far, scientists have been able to develop 4 different generations of gene editing methods, 3 of which are based on protein, for example, meganuclease, zinc finger nuclease, TALEN. The recent addition is CRISPR, which is a combination of protein and RNA. If we compare their efficacy or feasibility, we'll see that CRISPR is much superior than any other method. Before learning the reason behind its superiority than other methods, let's learn a little more about the bacteria where you can find them. For example, our hand under microscope may look like this. You might see thousands of different bacteria or viruses, and some of them might be deadly and pathogenic. So you need to be really careful about it. However, have you ever thought whether these microorganisms, let's say bacteria, are safe in their own world or not? Actually, they are not. Bacteria are on constant attack from their own enemy called virus or phage or bacteriophage. This virus can target bacteria and infect it, and then it can inject its own genetic material, either RNA or DNA, inside cell. And then it can hijack the cell to synthesize new molecule called its own molecule, protein, DNA, and RNA. And with that, it can make thousands of new particles or its progeny or babies, and then it can burst it open or lyse it and kill the bacteria. And this freshly or coming out, after it comes out, it can infect new bacteria. So in this process, we don't really expect all the bacteria to die by now, but which is not the case. For example, in a single drop of seawater, you can find millions of bacteria and close to 10 millions of viruses and other organisms. So scientists are always curious, what's the reason behind their coexistence? How they can coexist in the same environment? Human by nature is always attracted to patterns. For example, finding patterns in the stars. Similarly, molecular biologist Francisco Mojica, while he was looking at the physiology of bacteria, he found distinct patterns in the bacterial genome. He found repeats in the DNA structure or in the genome. That means a same sequence coming over and over again. However, they are also separated by another sequence called spacer, and they are unique in sequence. Later on, in 2002, with Ruud Judson, he named it as cluster regularly interspaced short palindromic repeat or CRISPR. Later on, subsequent year 2005, Dusko found out that these spacers are extrachromosomal. That means they are not part of bacterial origin. And he also proposed that there might be a mechanism for bacteria to acquire or to get this kind of spacer from outside, for example, from virus. And once they have it, they become resistant against that phages or virus. So basically, CRISPR is involved in the immunity of bacteria. So in dairy industry, for example, in making cheese and yogurt, we use different kinds of bacteria. And these bacteria are always susceptible toward phage infection. So this is a great concern for any dairy industry, and phage infection or contamination can really reduce the yield or production. So scientists were looking for mutants of bacteria which will be resistant to viruses. At the same time, two scientists, Barangu and Horvath, they found out that once they incorporate a portion of viral or phage gene in the CRISPR array in the bacteria, it becomes resistant against that virus. So this was a huge achievement for the dairy industry, but scientists had very limited knowledge about how exactly it works. For example, how bacteria exactly acquires foreign genetic material during infection and incorporate that into its genome, and how exactly it processes into RNA, and what are the other elements involved in the formation of effector proteins, which is involved in the interference of or in providing them of immunity against phage infection. So in 2016, 7th of October, five scientists were recognized with Warren Albert Foundation Prize as the pioneer in the CRISPR discovery. So there are two reasons I am mentioning it. First of all, in this meeting, I had an opportunity to interact with two brilliant scientists, Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier. The other reason is the day. On exactly after 4 years, on 7th of October 2020, bacteriologist Emmanuel Charpentier and RNA biologist Jennifer Doudna were selected for the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for their development of method for gene editing based on CRISPR. So this is the landmark paper that came out in 2012 in Science, where they demonstrate that how exactly CRISPR works. They also published subsequent other scientific journals where they deciphered each of the mechanism. For example, how exactly bacteria captures foreign genetic material and makes it a part of its own genome, and how exactly it can process that into small RNA called guide RNA or crRNA with the help of RNase-3. They also discovered another RNA called tracer RNA, and they deciphered the exact mechanism by which the other proteins, for example, Cas9 binds and targets the foreign genetic material or virus DNA in a sequence-specific manner and provides immunity for the bacteria. In a simpler version, first, tracer RNA binds with the other component crRNA by forming a simple duplex segment. The crRNA also has a crucial portion which is called spacer sequence, which is important for sequence-specific DNA targeting. After that, Cas9, the protein binds and makes the effector complex. To make it simple and more useful in gene editing application, first they simplified the version. So what they did, they link crRNA with tracer RNA to form a single guide RNA or called sgRNA. So for the first time, Doudna and Charpentier demonstrated CRISPR-Cas9 mediated gene editing in vitro. So here is a beautiful animation from Nature Group demonstrating how exactly CRISPR-Cas9 works. So the blue molecule is called Cas9 that binds with sgRNA or single guide RNA highlighted in red color to form a complex called Cas9 complex, which is active nuclease. That means that can bind, that can chew up DNA. So how exactly it works? First, this complex binds with a sequence called protospacer adjacent motif or PAM sequence. This PAM sequence is kind of like a postal code for delivery. So once Cas9 finds that, then it uses its 20 nucleotide guide RNA sequence that I have just explained, and it mails or opens up the DNA to form RNA DNA mixed duplex. And once the complementarity between these DNA RNA matches, then Cas9 undergoes enormous change. First, it activates two nucleus domain or two, you can say, seizures, which can induce double stranded break. So this is exactly the way Cas9 can recognize a DNA in a sequence-specific manner and induce a cut. So the advantage of CRISPR over the other method, protein-based method, is it uses a modular guided RNA, and that makes the targeting really flexible. As the sequence-specific DNA targeting ability of CRISPR system solely depends on the sequence of this 20 nucleotide guide RNA spacer, it becomes really easy to target different gene sequence just by manipulating the sequence of this portion. For example, let's say if we have to target 4 different genomic regions or 4 different gene sequences, then we can employ the same nuclease or Cas9 the sequence-specific DNA targeting ability of Cas9 complex solely depends on this 20 nucleotide guide RNA spacer. Now it becomes extremely easy to target any gene sequence just by manipulating this sequence. For example, let's say if we have to target 4 different genomic loci or 4 different gene sequences, we can make use of the same Cas9 enzyme, but manipulate the guide RNA sequence in such a way it complementary to its target, and they can bind to their designated gene target. It became extremely easy to virtually target any genomic region in our genome and do genetic manipulations or for any genetic manipulation applications. So after Doudna and Charpentier demonstrated CRISPR-based gene editing in vitro, then 2 other scientists, the giant synthetic biologist George Church and extremely talented scientist Fang Zhang, they first modified the CRISPR enzyme in such a way it becomes compatible with mammalian cell editing. And for the first time, they demonstrated human cell gene editing with CRISPR-Cas9. So after realizing the potential of CRISPR-based method, scientists across the globe, they started putting their effort together for demonstrating various kinds of genetic manipulations, starting from disruption of a functional gene, deletion of a faulty gene or disease-causing gene, or even insertion of a foreign gene, epigenetic and transcription regulation, single base resolution based editing, or even nucleic acid detection based diagnostic methods. I'm going to discuss all of these methods in a simplified version in next few slides. Let's say we know that this particular gene sequence or gene C is responsible for particular disease. Now, the easiest way to repair that, we can just target this gene C and disrupt its function. The easiest way to do that, induce a double-stranded break with CRISPR and allow the cell to take care of it. For example, after making a double-stranded break into gene C, first there will be loss of DNA on both sides, then cellular enzyme and protein, for example, Q-protein, that will come and bind and stabilize these broken ends, and then it will also recruit different cellular enzyme, for example, DNA picasase, Artemis, and with that, it can put or join the 2 broken ends with the help of ligase. And in this process, either you lose the disease-causing gene, or you can also lose the function of that particular disease-causing gene, which is also depicted on the left side. However, after you make a sequence-specific double-stranded break in a genomic region, you can also bias the repairing pathway just by providing a DNA template that will help you incorporating a foreign gene or any gene sequence of your interest into this broken site. So there are various diseases, genetic diseases, which do not have like huge alteration or error. It's only a small change from, let's say, from A to T in a crucial gene in the hemoglobin that can lead to the disruption on the formation of hemoglobin complex, which leads to another deadly disease called sickle cell anemia. Now, to correct or repair this kind of error, you don't have to make a lot of change. You need to just revert it back, or you can have to change it back from T to A. A method that came out of a brilliant chemical biologist, David Liu, where he was able to employ CRISPR system to perform precise chemical reaction on DNA. The way he did, he fused the Cas9 enzyme with another enzyme, which can change DNA bases from one to another. For example, initially he was able to demonstrate change from C to T and A to G. So this becomes really easy to manipulate genetic error and change it back to its native or original sequence. So now we know methods to manipulate DNA sequences, either by cutting it or changing the DNA bases. So then the question comes, is it possible to manipulate downstream process, let's say transcription process, without touching the DNA? Because if we make up that any change in the DNA, we don't know if there is any long-term effect in the future. So for that, another brilliant young scientist, Stan Lee, worked with Doudna and Weissman. He developed another method based on CRISPR, where he first mutated the Cas9 enzyme or modified the Cas9 enzyme to remove the two scissors, the cutting tools. So it becomes dead Cas9 or D-Cas9 now, but it can still bind the DNA. Now he fused different transcription factor either directly to the Cas9 or via a string of protein or peptide. In the similar line, Frank then developed another method where he was able to recruit this kind of protein directly onto the guide RNA. So after that happens, you can deliver these specific proteins into a genomic locus, and then they can recruit different enzymes involved in transcription. So you can turn the transcription on. Following the similar principle, instead of transcription activator, you can also employ or attach transcription inhibitor like GRAB domain, which can physically block the access to the genomic site so that you can repress or you can stop the transcription. You can also attach a fluorophore or a signaling molecule like a fluorescent protein so that you can map particular sequence in our genome. So after demonstrating that too, then the question comes, is it possible to manipulate further downstream process translation or making of protein directly? For that, Fang Zhang developed or discovered another enzyme called Cas13. So unlike Cas9, which targets double-stranded DNA and involved in bacterial immunity, Cas13 can also target foreign DNA, foreign genetic material, but it's RNA. So Cas13 can recognize invading RNA from virus and chew it or break it, so that it also gives protection to bacteria against their RNA virus. So Fang Zhang and other group were able to employ Cas13 to demonstrate RNA targeting, so that it's useful in targeting various genetic diseases. For example, they're able to target various RNA which is involved in synthesis of disease-causing protein, so that if you let's say, chew it up the intermediate RNA, so there won't be any translation or making of this disease-causing protein, so that you can have a remedy for the genetic disease. All right. So the other component is RNA. Is it possible to target RNA as well with CRISPR? For that, again, David Liu came up with another strategy. So unlike his earlier method, he was able to modify DNA bases. Here, he was able to modify the RNA bases in a RNA transcript with the help of CRISPR. So here, what he did, he made use of dead Cas13 and then fused that to an enzyme which can perform chemical reaction onto the RNA bases, so that you can have desired modification on the RNA transcript or RNA itself, so that you can modify the downstream protein synthesis process. The only component that remains untouched in this particular scheme is the protein. So the question comes, is it possible to employ CRISPR to directly target protein? So I would like to mention that even though there are several other effective methods to target protein, however, for the first time, Craig group demonstrated a method where he was able to directly employ Cas9 or CRISPR-Cas9 to demonstrate targeting a particular protein. So he developed two different molecules. One is RNA-DNA conjugate. The other one is a small molecule. So this complex, the RNA part will bind with nuclease gate Cas9 or dCas9, and it also has a pending protein domain that can bind to the small molecule, one part of the small molecule. Now, this complex has two different parts exposed. One is the DNA, other one is the remaining part of the small molecule. In the next step, DNA can bind to specific protein. They are called transcription factor. And the small molecule part, it can recruit cellular protein degrading machinery. So in this way, we can employ in proximity induced protein degradation with the help of CRISPR-Cas9, and it will be then targeted. The protein will be targeted for proteasomal degradation. Okay, so so far we have discussed all the manipulating methods where you can target different DNA, RNA, or protein. The remaining application is extremely crucial is gene sequence specific detection and their application in diagnostics. So the first example that came from Fang Zhang group here, where he was able to employ Cas13 for detecting viral DNA. So the Cas13D was designed in such a way it can recognize only viral RNA. And once it finds that, the enzyme, it becomes non-specific, or it becomes like degrading machinery for RNA. Any RNA that comes close to the enzyme, it can be degraded. So a brilliant group of scientists led by Jonathan Omar and Fang and also Kunin, they were able to explore this unusual behavior of Cas13D to develop a detection method for viral RNA. So I'll give an example for COVID-19, how they were also able to develop a method for detecting COVID-19. So after they collect the sample from the patient, they extract RNA from it. And then in the first step, they amplified the level of RNA in the sample. At the same time, they also added reporters into the solution. And then they added Cas13. And the guidance is designed in such a way it can detect the viral RNA. And when it finds the viral RNA, then it becomes a RNA degrading machinery, non-specific RNA degrading. We call it bystander effect, including degradation of the reporters. So we'll get signals, and that will indicate the finding of viral RNA in the sample, and we can load onto a diagnostic kit or flow chamber where, if there is no COVID-19, the signal will come from the bottom lane. If there is COVID-19, the signal will come from the top lane. So it becomes easy to detect. Another example came from our own Indian group led by Debajyoti Chakraborty and Shobhik Maity group. So they developed another brilliant method called Feluda to detect COVID-19. Let's see how that works. So what they did, they first collect the sample from a patient or suspected patient, and then they extract the RNA and convert that into cDNA. After that, amplify it into double-stranded DNA, and at the same time, they put a tag or anchor to the double-stranded DNA. So these double-stranded DNA are nothing but viral DNA with a tag or anchor. After that, they added another Cas enzyme called FN-Cas9, Francisella noviscaria Cas9, which is engineered in such a way it can bind and detect only double-stranded DNA that's coming from virus. Now this complex has two tags. One is the anchor, other one is a fluorophore or signaling molecule. Now if you take a chamber where you put a tag that can bind onto the anchor, so it can basically collect all the signaling molecule in the chamber. So following previous strategy, you can also load onto a commercial flow chamber where you can detect the signal that will indicate the detection of COVID-19. So basically, CRISPR-Cas9 has been utilized to demonstrate almost every possible genetic manipulation, either by targeting DNA, RNA, or protein. Then the obvious question comes, is there any risk in CRISPR-mediated gene editing? To understand that, let's look at the gene editing events more closely. Suppose I need to edit this particular gene. First thing I need to know the sequence or DNA sequence of this gene. And once you have that, then you can design the guide RNA in such a way it exactly matches with the target. So there is no mismatch. We call it as mismatch. So you can see there is no mismatch. 1 is matching with 1, 2 is 2 with 2, and 20 with 20. However, in an unfortunate or unavoidable situation, if there is another gene segment, let's say this one, which is also closely related with this particular gene sequence. For example, it has almost similar gene sequence, but there is only one difference. Now, one thing we need to keep in mind, the early gene sequence, especially like 1 to 10, that is called seeding region or seed region, which is important for binding with the guide RNA. If there is any mismatch on the distal, on the end part, that doesn't matter much. Especially here, you can see the mutation is far away. It's on the extremely distal end. So in this case, like this particular guide RNA or design guide RNA will not be able to discriminate between the on target and off target. So it will end up cutting both on target as well as off target gene. This is called off target activity. So off-target activity is one of the biggest challenge in CRISPR. Apart from that, there are other challenges. For example, excess Cas9 or overactivity can lead to off-target mediated genotoxicity, or it can also activate, or it can also severely damage chromosomal structure. It can also activate a pathway called P53 activation, and that can lead to cell death. And it can also give rise to mosaicism in the case of embryonic editing. Due to several other challenges, Cas9 requires its multiple control over its multiple dimensions. So I have also, apart from other groups, I have also developed several methods for developing a modular CRISPR system. I'm going to discuss maybe a couple of them. Here, first thing I did, I modified the enzyme in such a way. Now CRISPR-Cas9, the Cas9 enzyme will have a tag. It's called destabilized domain tag. So this destabilized domain, it remains in misfolded form inside cell. Now our own cells have a mechanism to take care of such disorder or poorly ordered structured protein. So the way it works, it will first bind with a particular target protein. This is called destabilized domain protein, and then it can bind with another enzyme called E2. After that, another enzyme E1 that binds with E2 and then transfer a tag to this destabilized domain. Then it can be transferred to a proteasome, a degrading machinery inside cell. With the expense of energy from ATP, it will degrade the destabilized domain protein and it will recycle it. So following this similar principle, this particular fusor protein will also be degraded. So we will not have any functional CRISPR system. However, there are certain drug molecules that can bind onto this misfolded protein and it can protect it from cellular degradation. So we'll have a functional CRISPR system. So basically, just by using drug molecule, you can turn off and on this CRISPR system, engineered CRISPR system. So our engineered system, as you can see, when I employed in editing human cell gene editing, targeting the green fluorescent protein gene, EGFP gene. So without any treatment, you can see they're happily expressing green fluorescent protein. You can see the signal. However, without drug molecule, the system doesn't work. It remains inactive. You can see the signal. As soon as you introduce drug molecule, you can see there is loss of signal. That means Cas9 has become active and it can induce gene editing targeting the EGFP gene. I was also able to demonstrate another control where we combined light and small molecule together to activate Cas9, and you can see the cells which are getting both light and small molecule, there the Cas9 is getting activated, and you can see the gene disruption or gene editing. The other strategy that we develop is transcriptional regulation. The way we did, we fused the regulatory domain or misfolded protein with transcription activator. I have discussed how transcription activator works to activate certain protein expression. So following similar principle that I just discussed, so using small molecule, you can regulate the function of this fusion protein, and you can activate particular gene transcription. So here in this plot, you can see without this drug molecule, it remains silent. As soon as you put drug molecule, it becomes active. So now you have a nice control over the activation of particular gene transcription. Not only that, you can also regulate the extent or number of RNA or mRNA transcript just by controlling the dose of the drug molecule. There are many other avenues where CRISPR has already revolutionized. One such method is called gene drive. In normal Mendelian inheritance, there will be always 50% chance of parental gene sequence into its progeny or babies. That's how we maintain the diversity in a population. However, one can employ a CRISPR system to manipulate that. For example, if we take an engineered mosquito with CRISPR system, that can bias the gender of their babies. For example, you can make both the babies male. That's how you'll end up having all the male in that family tree. So basically, you can shrink the population of female into that particular species population, so you can force it towards extinction. So this method is so powerful that it's already being tested in field trial to fight against malaria and dengue-related diseases. The other avenue that I couldn't touch at all is the agricultural sector. CRISPR-Cas9 is already revolutionized, and it has already enhanced the production of many crop production. And you can also think of making a mutant plant, for example, paddy, so that it will require less water, or you can make them resilient to heat. The other avenue is embryonic editing, which is extremely controversial. So the report came in 2018 January when one Chinese scientist reported first ever CRISPR baby. So he edited the human embryo, in such a way that the babies are mutants or resistant to certain genes. Let's see how that worked. So he took egg from a mother and sperm from a father who already has HIV. Now, in normal case, if they want to have a baby, the baby will end up having HIV as well. So what he did in vitro fertilization, or called IVF. At the same time, he injected CRISPR as well, so that he can delete a particular gene called CCR5. This particular gene is responsible for HIV infection. Now, in the fertilized egg, he found out that there is no CCR5 gene in it. Then he transplanted those fertilized egg into mother's womb, who delivered 2 babies. Now these babies won't have any CCR5. That means they became resistant again towards HIV. One thing I'd like to mention, that I sincerely apologize to many other phenomenal scientists whose work I couldn't be included in the short presentation due to time limit. So what's next? Definitely CRISPR can revolutionize and change the world the way it is. We can think of enhancing the production of agriculture in the agriculture sector or crop, so that there is no hunger in today's world. CRISPR is already in its way to provide a solution for many genetic diseases or even infectious diseases. If we can have these 2 solutions, definitely we can explore CRISPR for other applications. For example, having a designer baby. But this is just a story for now. Unless we have a solution for both hunger and disease, the designer baby concept should remain confined to sci-fi concept only. So with that, I'll conclude my talk here. First, I'd like to thank my PhD research supervisor, Professor Shantanu Bhattacharya, and Professor K. Muniappa, my close collaborator, and my postdoc mentor, Amit, Matt, and Bridget, and also my collaborators inside lab and outside lab, for example, Function Lab, Solder's lab, David Liu, Marafini, Paul, and Bizet's lab, and also my funding support, CSR and Road Next 10. So with that, I'd like to conclude my seminar here. And if you have any question, I'd like to answer them first. Or if you want to contact me, if you have any other question, further question, you can also contact in my email ID or following my social media. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Basudev, for a nice talk and quite an interesting elaboration. So, so the floor is open. So questions, comments, you can raise your hand, or you can, you can raise your hand and or go ahead and ask questions. Yeah. So, Ritavan, please go ahead.
Hi. I have a question which is probably pretty naive, but I'm just curious. So if some change is made in one part of the gene,
right,
or maybe in one cell, but then organisms are, you are saying about this, crops have, there are some changes have been made, etc. So if there are multicellular organisms, how can that change propagate into all the cells? Unless you do it at the very beginning when cell division has just started or something like that.
Exactly. So the efficiency of CRISPR is a concern. Unless you make the change in the beginning during the development, now the efficiency or targeting efficiency is a challenge. So let's say the success rate, it will depend how many cells you can target with CRISPR. But in many of the disease, so you don't have to manipulate or edit 100% cells. A certain percentage of editing might be sufficient to, let's say, survival, or might be able to rescue from certain disease.
Okay.
So that's the problem with the delivery. So how efficiently can you deliver CRISPR system to cells? That will determine the success rate. Yes, definitely.
Okay, thank
you. So any other questions or comments for Basudev? Okay, I had a question, Basu.
Yes.
Yeah. So where you said that this chemically induced this CRISPR, when you can activate and deactivate in with the help of drug. Right. So so you have to for a practical application, you also have to be sure that this drug is not messing around with other other component of the cell or material, for example, right?
Definitely. So yeah, that's a really great concern actually. So the drug molecules I have used, one of them is antibiotic. It's called trimethoprim.
Okay.
We generally use that as antibiotic drug molecule. So that is like close to like orthogonal, bioorthogonal in our system. So it doesn't have any effect on our system unless the concentration is very high. So in that respect, the drug is orthogonal and it is
all right. Okay. Suman has a question. Suman, please go ahead.
Yes, I had a question that in one of your slide, I don't remember, you said that just only a change of T to A can sufficient to register disease. So my question is how a protein exactly find what T that should be changed. I mean, there is so many T's and A's. How the protein find the exact position?
Yes, that's the reason you need a delivery enzyme. Now we are using Cas9 system for delivering that particular enzyme, which can alter the base from T to A, or let's say A to T. Okay, so we use Cas9 as the delivery agent and like vehicle, and it can, depending upon the guide RNA sequence, it can specifically deliver that to a particular genetic locus. Okay, let's say if you have the mutation in particular sequence, then you will design the guide RNA in such a way that the Cas9 can bind. Actually, if I can go to the slide, that will be good. Otherwise, anyway, so basically that totally depends upon the guide RNA 20 nucleotide spacer. So you have to design in such a way that the enzyme reaches to that genomic site. I have already discussed how we can
like deliver a Cas9 system or complex to a particular genomic locus just by designing the guide RNA. So that is quite possible.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions, comments for Basudev? Okay, if not, let us thank Basudev for the nice colloquium. And if you wish, please unmute yourself and clap.
And one thing I'd like to mention that if anyone has any question, further question, they can directly contact me with my email ID. So I'll be able to reply.
Yeah.
All right. Once again, thank you, Naren, and thanks all the other organizers for giving me this opportunity. Hope it was helpful to everyone and I was able to contribute in some way.
Sure, sure. Thank you, Basudev, for being with us. And yeah, it's a great pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.